The story opens with a quiet life on a lonely island, where a cheerful kid named Percival is sprinting across open grass when he spots something rare, a sky fish gliding through the air. Knowing dinner just appeared, he yells for his grandpa Verghese, a mountain of a man who looks like he wrestles boulders for fun, and with no hesitation, Verghese casually hurls a pitchfork straight into the sky and nails the flying beast out of midair. However, the fish tumbles off a cliff, so Percival dives after it without a second thought, barely catching himself on the rocks as he secures the meal and avoids dying in the process. Later, they enjoy the cooked meat together, though a faint purple aura still clings to it in the background, which feels like a bad omen waiting to happen. Once they finish eating, the two head out to spar, and as usual, Verghese wins with ease, but Percival still beams with pride since he managed to last longer than before. Verghese then takes him to the cliff's edge and talks about the massive world beyond the island, full of places to see and adventures to chase. But Percival shrugs it off and says he is happy right where he is as long as he has his grandpa. That night, over dinner, Verghese mentions that Percival's father left to travel the world at 16, even though Percival believes his dad is already dead. Verghese asks if he ever feels lonely living so far from everyone else, but Percival answers honestly that he is content. Later, he can't sleep and steps outside to stare at the stars, his heart racing as he imagined the adventures his grandpa described, yet he convinces himself he doesn't want anything to change, which is about the biggest death flag imaginable. The next morning, Percival wakes up to a floating boat landing on the island, carrying a fully armed knight who mentions his sky fish familiar was shot down, meaning whoever did it must be nearby. Percival runs over, amazed by the flying boat, and when the knight says he is looking for a man named Verghese, Percival instantly blurts out that it is his grandpa. The knight claims they knew each other 16 years ago, when Verghese was still a holy knight, and says he just came to visit. Percival doesn't question why a friendly visit requires full battle armor and even points out exactly where his grandpa is, and to keep the kid busy, the knight tells him to play on the flying boat. Percival has fun at first, but suddenly realizes he just gave a dangerous stranger directions to his grandpa. Panicking, he sprints back as fast as he can. Meanwhile, Verghese is calmly cutting vegetables when the knight appears behind him and mocks him for using his old holy knight sword as a kitchen knife. Verghese recognizes the voice instantly and blocks an attack just in time, getting blasted through his house but escaping serious damage. He leaps back into the fight, their swords clashing, but he can't break through the knight's defense, and when an opening appears, the knight unleashes his power, carving Verghese and obliterating the house in one brutal strike. Percival arrives just in time to see his grandpa torn apart and screams for the knight to stop. Instead, the knight fires a blast at Percival and declares he is next. Percival throws rocks at him in desperation, but none of it works, and he ends up right in the line of fire. Verghese jumps in front of him and saves him, shouting for Percival to run while he still can, but the knight makes it clear neither of them will leave alive. He slashes Verghese repeatedly in an instant, then fires a massive blast straight through Percival, launching him backward, coughing blood and barely conscious. Percival musters his last strength to throw a punch, which does absolutely nothing, and he gets sent flying into the snow as it begins to fall, bleeding and staring up at the sky. Verghese asks why the knight came all this way just to kill him now, and the knight explains a prophecy has surfaced about 4 knights of the apocalypse who will one day overthrow King Arthur. With no clear leads, he decided to eliminate Verghese just in case, and killing Percival was simply part of the greater good. As he leaves, Percival struggles to his feet and apologizes for being too weak to protect his grandpa, while somehow still being alive after an attack that blasted through a mountain. Verghese tells him he was never meant to protect someone like him and should live for something greater. Percival believes this tragedy is punishment for lying to himself about being satisfied with staying on the island forever, but Verghese admits he was genuinely happy hearing Percival say he wanted to stay with him, making Percival smile through the pain. Before Verghese coughs up more blood, he admits he doesn't have much time left and says there is something important he needs to tell Percival before he dies. The truth finally hits when Verghese reveals the knight's name is Ironside, and even worse, he is Percival's real father, which completely breaks Percival's mind because he was told his dad died years ago, and no normal father would slice his own kid apart just to be safe. However, Verghese doesn't have the strength or time to explain everything, so he tells Percival that if he wants answers, he needs to find Ironside himself, meaning this journey is something he has to start alone. Verghese apologizes but says he knows Percival can survive out there because he raised him strong. The next morning, Percival wakes up beside his grandpa's lifeless body, and the weight of reality finally crushes him. He buries Verghese and feels completely hollow now that his entire world is gone. While repairing the damaged house, he finds a hidden box containing clothes Verghese secretly stitched together over many nights for Percival's future adventures. Days later, Percival builds a small monument for his grandpa, puts on the new outfit, flips his cape with confidence, immediately trips on it, then begins climbing down the massive island. After a full day of climbing, he has barely made progress and can't even see the ground through the clouds, but eventually he gets close enough to spot land, loses his grip from excitement, and slams straight into the ground below, somehow surviving. When he stands up, he meets a strange creature he's never seen before and casually introduces himself, explaining he came from the island behind him and is looking for a place where people live. The creature clearly doesn't understand a word and walks away, so Percival follows it until it suddenly starts running, leading him straight into a traveling performance troupe. Their leader, Nasians, throws paper into the air and ignites it, and performs a trick with a disappearing monkey and hoop, and Donnie refuses to do his part because there's no audience, until he notices Percival watching in complete awe, confused about where a kid like him came from in the middle of nowhere. Percival begs for more magic, and Donnie decides to scam him by asking for payment. But Percival has no idea what money even is, so Donnie says he'll just take his stuff instead. He does his trick and makes Percival float, filling him with joy, while secretly loading everyone into the cart and stealing Percival's belongings. The others immediately call Donnie out for being awful, and after realizing he officially crossed into jerk territory, Donnie decides to turn back, only for Percival to rocket past them at insane speed and catch up, terrifying Donnie into apologizing instantly. Percival calmly asks for help finding someone, saying he's looking for Ironside, and when they ask why, he explains that Ironside is his father and also murdered his grandpa, which makes them assume he's out for revenge. They don't recognize the name but say they're heading to a village where he might learn something, so Percival joins them, praising their performance as real magic, though Donnie complains about having to survive off cheap tricks. Nasians explains their dreams of becoming holy knights were crushed, which makes Percival remember Ironside and Verghese were both holy knights, shocking the group when they realize Percival is the son of one. Before they can react, villagers rush over begging for help because a giant wolf is attacking. Donnie offers to call holy knights using his horse but decides they can handle it themselves for food and lodging. Once they arrive, he instantly realizes the wolf is way beyond them and panics, fleeing to get help. Percival jumps off the cart instead because people are still in danger, even though Donnie thinks a kid fighting that thing is suicide. Percival takes his stance and declares he's going to kill and eat the wolf, fires 2 arrows, immediately hits himself instead due to awful aim, pins his own cape to the ground, and nearly gets mauled. Donnie rushes back to save him and gets injured, which finally makes Percival snap. He drops the bow, blocks the next attack barehanded, leaps forward, and knocks the wolf unconscious with a single strike, stunning everyone. As the village celebrates their safety, a familiar crest appears on the wolf, while the strange creature from earlier watches threw a magic crystal from a cliff, and a knight observing realizes Percival defeated one of his familiars, deciding to face him personally next. Donnie gets patched up and asks where Percival went, learning and took him to the lake to clean up. She comments that he acts way too mature for a kid his age despite being wounded, while Percival is distracted wondering why his body is reacting strangely around her. Back in the village, everyone celebrates their hero, toasts Percival, and he happily downs berry juice thinking it's amazing. Donnie jokes he'd rather have alcohol until and reminds him they're both 16. Percival casually adds that he's 16 too, instantly making and turn red after what just happened at the lake, and the celebration continues as Percival's journey quietly pushes forward. The party winds down, and Percival starts asking everyone if they have ever heard the name Ironside, but every answer comes back empty, and the frustration builds until he finally screams Ironside's name at the top of his lungs. and tells him yelling is pointless because the man isn't here, but someone else hears him loud and clear. A knight known as the Black Knight descends from the sky, riding a floating shield, and calmly says he knows that name. He introduces himself as Pelagard and explains he came to find the kid who killed his familiar, only to discover Percival is somehow still alive when reports said he was dead. He asks if Verges survived too, and Percival confirms his grandpa died from his wounds. Nasians realizes Pelagard is a holy knight and steps in to protect Percival, only to get casually smacked aside. Pelagard quickly apologizes, saying he meant to push him, not knock him halfway to the afterlife. Percival demands to know why Pelagard knows both Verges and Ironside, and Pelagard explains he fought alongside them in the past. That answer isn't good enough, so Percival gives him 5 seconds to say where Ironside is. Pelagard instead praises Percival for having guts and not fearing a holy knight. Talking clearly isn't getting anywhere, so the crowd wisely backs off as Percival charges in unarmed, landing a clean hit that actually pushes Pelagard back, impressing him despite the heavy armor. Percival says if he wins, Pelagard has to tell him where Ironside is. Pelagard agrees but adds his own rule: if he wins, Percival must come train under him. The fight ramps up fast as Pelagard brings down his mace. Percival blocks and counters, only to get overwhelmed by a brutal combo. Pelagard stops and tells him his spirit is strong, but he needs to fight seriously and use magic. Percival admits he has none, which shocks Pelagard and makes him want to train the kid even more. Pelagard starts beating him down to force him to surrender, but Percival refuses to quit. The villagers watch helplessly until a kid shouts for Percival to keep fighting, and in that moment something snaps. Light erupts from Percival's hands. Pelagard thinks he was lied to, and Percival freaks out just as much, flailing around and accidentally blasting Pelagard backward. Donnie realizes this glowing power is Percival's magic and tells him to calm down. Pelagard gets back up and studies him, guessing what type of magic it could be: destruction, enhancement, or something else entirely, and now that Percival has power, he tells him to go all out. Pelagard swings his mace and unleashes a massive fireball. Percival dodges but gets his cape set on fire. Pelagard explains this is his magic, pyro, a fireball that chases its target non-stop, forcing Percival to keep moving just to survive. Pelagard warns him dodging won't win the fight, so Percival rushes in and slams the fireball into the ground, but Pelagard splits the flames and blasts him from every direction, igniting him completely. The fire will not go out unless Pelagard stops it or Percival burns to ash. Surrender is the only logical option, yet Percival refuses even as his friends beg him to stop. He spreads his magic across his body to shield himself, stunning Pelagard since Percival awakened his power only minutes ago, but Percival is already cooked and should be finished. Instead, his magic gathers into tiny copies of himself that cling to Pelagard and suppress the flames, and right when it looks like Percival should be done, he heals himself and stands back up, leaving Pelagard completely baffled. Burnt clothes aside, Percival is fine, and Pelagard realizes this magic is something rare, hero-type magic, possessed by only 1 in 10,000, which means Percival could be one of the 4 knights of the apocalypse from the prophecy, confirming Ironside's fears. Pelagard knows holy knights will hunt Percival down once they learn this, but he refuses to let that kind of potential die. While he is thinking, Percival walks up and decks him across the street. Pelagard laughs and praises Percival's control despite being a beginner but says talent alone won't beat a seasoned holy knight. Donnie knows that too and uses his levitation magic to trap Pelagard in the air, telling Percival to run while he can. Percival doesn't want to leave because he still needs answers. Pelagard loses patience with the interference and releases a massive fire blast to break free, injuring Donnie in the process. He says he hates hurting bystanders, but Donnie stepped into an honorable fight. Pelagard moves in to finish things when suddenly the strange fox-like creature Percival met earlier steps between them, confusing him. It pulls out a magic spell stone and instantly teleports Percival, Donnie, and itself away, and the 3 reappear standing on top of a dragon's. The 3 land on Dragon's Backbone, a massive landmark more than 30 miles from the village they escaped, and Percival instantly wants to go back and help everyone, but the fox snaps at him and calls him an idiot, saying he couldn't beat Pelagard and that Pelagard only showed up because Percival was there, so now that he's gone the knight has no reason to hurt the villagers and will probably leave. Donnie points out the bigger issue that the fox is literally talking. The fox ignores that and tells Percival to follow him, but Percival insists he still needs Pelagard to tell him where Ironside is. The fox explains Pelagard likely doesn't know anyway, even though they serve the same side, and when Donnie asks who Pelagard really is, the fox explains he's a knight serving an evil king and part of a squad sent to hunt down the future 4 knights of the apocalypse and kill them. Donnie has never heard of those knights, which makes sense because they don't officially exist yet. The fox then drops the bomb that he himself came from the future to find those 4 knights, the ones meant to oppose the powers of famine, pestilence, war, and death, and he finally found one, Percival, the Knight of Death. Meanwhile, at the Holy Knight headquarters, a meeting is held to share intel on the prophecy, revealing the Knights of the Apocalypse are all young boys, with signs like golden magic, eyes holding both light and darkness, and one with green wing-shaped hair. Ironside instantly realizes the last description matches Percival and leaves in silence, thinking he failed by not confirming his son's death. Pelagard appears behind him and bluntly says Percival is alive, admitting he just fought him. Ironside hopes Pelagard finished the job, but Pelagard says killing someone with that much potential would be a waste. The two clash as Ironside attacks, only for Pelagard to block easily. Pelagard argues it would be better to capture Percival and train him as a holy knight to prevent the prophecy, but Ironside refuses, believing Percival is destined to destroy the world. Back with Percival, the fox explains the prophecy, but Percival shrugs it off, saying he just won't destroy the world and problem solved. The fox says that's fine, but Percival still has to come with him. Percival insists on finding Ironside, so the fox reveals Ironside and the other knights are in Camelot. Donnie calls that impossible since Camelot was destroyed 16 years ago, but the fox says it still exists, just unreachable by normal means, and the path there starts through the kingdom of Lyonesse. Percival is immediately on board. Donnie protests but eventually agrees to come along, trusting Nasians and can manage on their own. As they finally leave Dragon's Backbone and head toward Lyonesse 200 miles away, Percival's stomach growls and he suggests a hunting contest. He grabs his bow, but Donnie immediately confiscates it, remembering how badly that went last time. Percival wanders off and finds a deep gorge that catches his curiosity and heads inside, while Donnie practices shooting and at least manages to fire straight. One stray arrow hits a giant nun praying in the forest. She brushes it off as harmless until fairies rush in warning that a short human entered the gorge, a place crawling with dangerous monsters. Those same monsters are currently getting demolished by Percival, who proudly beats them down until he hears a scream deeper inside, where an orange-haired man is trapped and about to be experimented on. Percival frees him but turns his back for 1 second and gets injected with a strange drug that knocks him out. This man is Nasians, the mad herbalist, known for experimenting on anything that moves and driving creatures in the gorge insane. Donnie wonders if Nasians is really that bad, but the fairies insist they saw him turn a rabbit into a monster with a needle, so they rush to save Percival. Percival wakes up tied to a chair, wearing only his underwear and completely confused. Nasians returns, shocked that Percival recovered so fast from a tranquilizer meant to last 10 hours, deciding it works out since he still wants to test more things. He injects Percival again and leaves, saying the effects should kick in soon. Almost immediately, Percival's hair grows even bigger, and he panics about never fitting his helmet again, while Nasians excitedly notes the drug could boost plant growth. Percival accuses him of hurting a fairy, but Nasians claims the fairy attacked first and it was self-defense. Percival points out Nasians had blood on his mouth earlier, only to learn he bites his lip when excited, realizing Nasians isn't purely evil. Percival asks to be released so he can continue his journey. Nasians agrees but insists on finishing one last experiment first, since stopping halfway could kill him. When Nasians turns around, he finds Percival already free, struggling to put his helmet on over his massive hair, unwilling to stay any longer. Nasians panics at losing such a valuable test subject and draws 2 magic swords, promising not to kill Percival but fully intending to keep him there. Percival blocks the attacks and tries to talk him down, saying if he's in trouble he would help. The fight keeps spiraling as Percival offers to help fix whatever is wrong, but Nasians refuses since he doesn't trust strangers and only needs a test subject to perfect the drug that can save the gorge. Percival gets knocked back and is about to lose when his helmet flies off and smacks Nasians in the face, sending him crashing into his work table as the precious drug goes airborne. Percival catches it, and Nasians desperately begs him not to ruin it, promising to let him go if he hands it back, but Percival realizes the drug still needs testing, so without hesitation he gulps the whole thing down and collapses screaming, shocking everyone because he could have died. Instead, the drug supercharges him with energy. Percival bolts outside, screaming at full volume, which alerts the others that he is somehow fine. Nasians questions why he would drink something so dangerous, and Percival explains he trusted Nasians because everything he did was to save the gorge, and judging by the fact Percival still has all his limbs, the drug clearly worked. Nasians thanks him and introduces himself properly before drinking the remaining drop himself and instantly passing out. Donnie and the others rush in and are stunned by Percival's even bigger hair, while the unconscious Nasians mutters about Ordo, a name the fairies recognize as a doctor who once lived in the gorge. They explain Ordo came there peacefully to gather herbs and promised never to harm the land. Later, they found the giant Dolores wounded in the forest with a baby Nasians, and Ordo raised him as his own, teaching him medicine until Ordo mysteriously vanished. After that, Nasians began his dangerous experiments. Meanwhile, the fairy Percival freed earlier plans to wipe out the forest using a monster named Ordo. Nasians wakes up and immediately tries to spread the drug to save the gorge, but the fairies panic and start throwing stones at him, demanding he leave forever. Percival catches the stones and throws them back, yelling that Nasians has been trying to save them all along, making the fairies hesitate, but it's already too late as a thick purple fog floods the gorge, killing plants and animals instantly. Nasians needs to act now, but Percival points out the drug is gone and there's no time to make more. That's when Nasians reveals his magic lets him recreate any drug he's ingested. He tells everyone to cover their mouths and releases the medicine across the gorge, restoring life. Sin warns the fog poisoned the soil itself, and from a massive hole emerges a grotesque monster, revealed to be Ordo, or what's left of him. Ordo releases more poisonous fog, and Nasians runs to him, begging him to stop, but Ordo only wants destruction and grabs Nasians to crush him. Dolores saves him but gets hit by the toxic breath and loses her arm. The fairy reappears, revealing he caused Ordo's transformation, meaning Percival accidentally unleashed this disaster by letting him escape earlier. Nasians breaks down knowing his grandfather was turned into a monster, and Percival promises to help fix him even though no one knows how. Sin suggests stopping the fairy might be the only way, but before they can act the fairy gets shot through the head by an arrow and drops dead. Ordo collapses too, and a holy knight appears above them. Percival demands his name, and the knight introduces himself as Talisker, the Ember Knight of the Eternal Kingdom, confirming he's connected to Ironside. Nasian screams at Talisker for what he did to Ordo, and Talisker says he'll answer their questions if they can land a single hit on him. Sin warns Nasians not to fall for it, but the fight begins anyway. Talisker notes Nasians has rare alteration and enchantment magic. Percival offers to fight with him but fails hilariously trying to activate his magic, even letting out a weak puff of gas instead. Nasians charges Talisker, who summons a brutal hailstorm. Percival somehow moves fast enough to shove Nasians out of the way but can't react when Ordo smashes him from behind. Talisker orders Ordo to finish Nasians, but Percival's speed kicks in again and he blocks the attack with his head, refusing to let Ordo be forced to kill after all Nasians did to protect the gorge. Ordo hesitates, begins crying, and calls out to Nasians, pushing Talisker to lose patience as he prepares another devastating hailstorm to crush Ordo and everyone else at once. Just as Talisker is about to finish Ordo, Percival's speed kicks back in and he launches himself upward, straight into the raging storm, literally throwing punches at falling hail and lightning while everyone below can only stare in disbelief at this kid boxing the weather itself. When it ends, Percival crashes back down, bleeding and drained, but Donnie slides in and catches him before he hits the ground. Nasians asks why he would risk his life like that, and Percival answers simply that he wants to save Ordo so Nasians can someday bring him back, and even without a plan, Nasians decides to trust him. Talisker moves in again, but Percival suddenly erupts in a blinding golden glow as his magic fully awakens, shocking everyone, because not only is Percival completely healed, his power is now even stronger than when he fought Pelargard. Talisker realizes Percival can regenerate and decides the only answer is to crush him so completely there's nothing left to heal, calling down a massive hailstorm directly on him. The impact is devastating, but Percival's magic absorbs every strike and fires the stones back, forcing Talisker to dodge and drop to one knee. Percival walks up and reminds him of the deal. One hit means answers and Ordo gets fixed. Talisker rages and swings his axe, but it can't even scratch Percival, no matter how many times he attacks. Talisker admits Percival's defense is unreal but doubts he can ever land a decisive blow barehanded. Percival demands to know why Ordo was turned into a monster when all he ever did was heal others and protect the forest. Talisker coldly explains that helping non-humans is unforgivable, because King Arthur seeks a world where only pure humans exist and all other races are erased. Ordo ignored his warning and paid the price. Percival calls that the dumbest excuse for cruelty he's ever heard. Talisker summons lightning and strikes him dead on, only for Percival to absorb it and rush forward using the lightning as his own weapon. Talisker finally recognizes him as one of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse and tries to kill him before the prophecy can come true. Sin shouts that Percival's power takes shape based on his imagination and tells him to picture a weapon, preferably not a bow. Talisker forms a massive flaming bird with his strongest attack, which triggers Percival's memory of slicing a rock bird for dinner, and in response he creates a knife, carving the magic bird cleanly apart in an instant, then hurls the blade and slams Talisker into the cliff, ending the fight. Sin tells Percival to turn off his magic, which he immediately realizes he has no idea how to do. Donnie notices Dolores is still alive but completely blackened, and Sin explains she used the giant skill heavy metal to survive. Nasians is relieved, but Ordo is still trapped as a monster until Sin finds and destroys the purple control rod Talisker dropped, causing Ordo to finally revert to his true self. Percival stands up and declares his new goal. Instead of chasing knights one by one, he's going straight after the one giving the orders, King Arthur himself, so no one else gets hurt. As they prepare to leave, Nasians runs after them and asks to join, and Percival happily welcomes him as his friend. Elsewhere, in a castle, Ironside meets with Caden, who reports the target is somewhere in the city but still elusive, promising to intensify the search. Anna senses something deeply wrong, which is confirmed when Ironside starts making creepy comments about her turning 16 and joking about marrying her to his son, before revealing he plans to kill that son anyway, then asking her to watch for fragments of the coffin of eternal darkness. Meanwhile, Percival's group arrives at the village of Sistana, where Percival's magic reacts and pulls him toward a tree, and despite possibly desecrating a grave, he digs it up and finds a coffin fragment. Sin recognizes it instantly, and Anna appears behind them with her sword drawn, accusing them of working with the Holy Knights. Donnie tries to explain but gets slammed into the dirt. Nasians follows right after, and when Anna confronts Percival, he simply hands over the fragment, catching her off guard. She still doubts them until she reads Percival's heart and realizes there's no darkness or lies in him at all, confirming they truly found it by accident, and as the tension settles, they ask her who the Holy Knight she serves actually is. The tension barely settles before Anna's conversation is cut short by a maid sent to summon her, and knowing the entire town is hunting for the relic, Anna quickly hides the fragment inside Percival's cloak, warning him to never show it to anyone or Ironside will get it. Hearing that name sparks 100 questions in Percival's head, but Anna has no time and rushes off. Later at the inn, the group wonders why she was so desperate to hide it, and Sin finally explains it's a fragment of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness, a legendary artifact forged long ago by a giant craftsman. Elsewhere, Anna argues with her father, Caden, saying it's insane that he let someone as dangerous as Ironside roam the city freely, especially when her power lets her see the evil in people. Caden admits she's right but says Ironside's strength is terrifying and provoking him could doom the city. Anna fires back that she will become a holy knight and protect the people herself, until Caden snaps and silences her with a slap. Moments later, he's summoned to meet Ironside, and from a nearby rooftop, Percival's group watches as Ironside reveals his own coffin fragment, which perfectly matches the one they have. Sin explains the artifact once belonged to the demon clan and requires sacrifices to activate, and if Ironside completes it, the entire city could be wiped out. Percival wants to jump in immediately, but Sin calms him down, reminding him the final fragment is still with them, so the ritual can't be finished yet. Even so, Percival insists on confronting Ironside, despite being warned that he'd only endanger himself and the civilians. Ironside begins lying to the townspeople, claiming the ceremony will save them, but Anna calls him out publicly, exposing that her magic lets her see through lies, and in response Ironside grabs her, ready to silence her. Sin rushes back to secure the fragment, while Percival leaps in to distract Ironside and help Anna escape. A blast narrowly misses them as they flee in the chaos, but when Sin returns, he sees the maid transform into a monster, steal the fragment, and deliver it straight to Ironside. Caden finally tries to stop him but is effortlessly brushed aside. The fragments are combined and the ritual begins. Sin explains they must interrupt it before Ironside sacrifices the entire city, and if they can steal even one piece, they win. Everyone agrees to help, though Anna senses Sin is hiding something. Before they split up, Sin warns Percival not to fight Ironside directly, since he's far beyond him right now. As the ritual activates, black sludge rises and spreads through the streets, turning into a massive monster that corrupts everything it touches, transforming citizens into beasts. Ironside orders his familiar to command the slaughter and ensure no humans escape. Percival reassures Anna that Sin will find a way, even though she doubts him for lying, choosing to trust Percival instead. They rush through the city and find Caden unconscious but alive, then confront Ironside, who coldly says he planned to kill Percival here but doesn't have time yet, unleashing a wave of power so intense it freezes everyone in fear except Percival, who charges in and strikes with magic, only for Ironside to cancel the attack without even turning around. The others remind Percival their goal is stopping the ritual, not beating Ironside, so he sends his magic clones to attack the coffin, but they're erased instantly, leaving Percival confused. Ironside realizes Percival is targeting the ritual and prepares to eliminate him, raising his fingers to unleash a lethal cross attack. Percival warns everyone just in time as the ground is shredded where they stood, proving Ironside could kill them all with one blow. Ironside scolds Percival for attacking his own father, shocking Anna as she learns Ironside is the man who killed Percival's grandfather. Donnie urges everyone to run, saying Ironside wouldn't hesitate to kill them all, but Nasians worries about abandoning the villagers. Donnie argues they barely know these people, while Anna reluctantly agrees it isn't fair to ask strangers to die for her town, and the weight of that choice hangs heavy as the chaos continues. The moment turns grim as Anna accepts that protecting her town is something she has to face herself, even if it costs her life. Nasians refuses to abandon anyone, but Donnie makes the opposite call and runs. Percival keeps pressing Ironside and shouts that if he cannot stop the ritual, then he will just destroy the coffin itself. Ironside answers by firing a barrage of crosses, forcing Percival to leap through the air as he tells the others to target the coffin while he stalls his father. But to Ironside, this fight is nothing. He slices straight through Percival's magic and mocks his sword skills as only good for cutting meat, raising his blade to finish him, until Anna jumps in, furious that Ironside murdered his own father and now wants to kill his son. Ironside is irritated that this girl pretending to be a holy knight keeps interfering, casually blocking every strike without even looking at her. He taunts her for fighting dressed like that, tearing her clothes apart, but instead of backing down she strips them away to reveal another outfit underneath, saying she owes Percival for saving her and will not retreat. Her resolve finally earns Ironside's attention as he turns and challenges her to land even a single scratch, but suddenly his body goes numb as the poison kicks in. Nasians has weakened him, working together at last. Annoyed and done with their tricks, Ironside scatters glowing red dust into the air, and despite the obvious warning the group fails to escape as countless red crosses rain down, leaving a massive pillar of smoke visible across the city. From a distant rooftop, a man watches before heading toward the chaos. Elsewhere, Donnie runs through streets filled with monsters, trying to escape, until he hears a child screaming and sees a girl and her mother about to be devoured. Frozen by fear and guilt, he realizes he cannot abandon them, even if he has no idea how to help. Back at the center, Anna's father throws himself in front of her and saves her, explaining that it is only natural for a parent to protect their child, and thanks to healing magic, he survives. Nasians survives too, but Percival is in far worse condition. Ironside admits Percival's growth is dangerous and explains he killed Verghese without guilt, because he might have been one of the four knights, and also because of a deep grudge from the past. During the distraction, a knight attacks Ironside from behind but is brushed aside, giving Percival a chance to rush the coffin, only for Ironside to slam him down, stab through his hand, and lecture him about respecting his parents. Anna tries to intervene, but Ironside threatens to break her next, freezing her in place. He continues beating Percival into the ground, declaring he will slaughter this town, then Lyonesse, and finally kill Percival so the four knights never unite. As Percival's hand tries to heal, Ironside stomps it flat, mocks his magic, and drives his sword through Percival's stomach. As everyone begs him to stop, Percival's eyes go dull and his magic fades completely. Ironside is convinced one of the four knights is dead and turns back to finish the ritual. Nasians runs over in tears and drags Percival's body away. Ironside ignores them. Nasians desperately tries to give him the medicine meant to save the gorge, but Percival cannot drink. Anna tries mouth to mouth, and still nothing works. Hope is gone, until a tiny Percival clone reforms, proving he is still alive. Ironside overhears this and launches another red cross, but Nasians jumps in front of Percival and shields him, surviving only because Ironside's power has weakened. Ironside gives him one last chance to walk away and live, but Nasians refuses and stands his ground. Anna joins him and clashes with Ironside again, fighting despite the overwhelming gap in power, as more and more tiny Percivals reform and his magic slowly returns. Even though Ironside is still stronger, he slices Anna's hair mid-fight while distracted. Percival's magic suddenly snaps back to full power and then keeps climbing even higher, right as Donnie comes back after realizing he cannot just abandon his friends to die here. But by then, Percival does not even need help, because his power is already flooding the battlefield, making Ironside regret not finishing the job earlier as he tries to strike again, only to realize it is too late. Percival has awakened with a new grasp of who he is and what his magic truly means, because even when he stands alone, the belief of the people around him fuels him, and that hope itself is the source of his strength. Meanwhile, back in town, chaos still reigns as monsters rampage under the orders of Ironside's familiar, who commands them to kill every human without mercy so the sacrifices can awaken the coffin. But something strange happens when a man steps out from a nearby alley holding several knives and instantly turns a monster into dust just as it is about to kill someone, the knife shattering as he calmly pulls out another and continues wiping out monsters one after another before they can even react. Explosions ripping through the streets and leaving the familiar completely confused. Ironside demands answers about why the sacrifices are not finished, but the familiar has none, since monsters have started dying to an unknown force he cannot explain, so he flies down to investigate, only for a titan monster beside him to be sliced in half mid-sentence, revealing the mysterious knife-wielding man, who then strikes the familiar as well, killing him along with a chain of nearby monsters in an instant. From the hill, Percival and the others can tell someone is clearing out the monsters in town, and while they do not know who it is, they believe it must be Sin's doing, and with so many monsters gone, Ironside can no longer gather enough sacrifices to activate the coffin, meaning he has lost. Ironside calmly accepts this and oddly praises Percival, saying he has grown fast and would have made his grandfather proud, even though Ironside himself killed that grandfather and even tried to kill Percival twice, claiming it was all just duty, then dropping his sword and saying he will be executed by his lord for failing, wanting only to see his son's face one last time. He almost convinces Percival, until and snaps him back to reality, calling out the lies and pointing out there is no regret or love in Ironside at all, and that he is just trying to trick Percival into getting close enough to kill him. Furious that his plan failed, Ironside opens fire with his crossbows, forcing Percival to dodge through the sky at insane speed, powered by the hope of his friends like living batteries, until Ironside's attacks slow due to Magellan's poison, giving Percival an opening to rain down magic like a bombing run that turns out to be a smokescreen, though Ironside easily counters the follow-up attack, proving Sin was right about his strength. Knowing they cannot win while he is guarding the coffin, Percival comes up with a plan involving Donnie, faking a direct charge while Donnie uses his magic to lift the coffin out of its protection, letting Percival fly up and smash it apart with his magic sword, grabbing a piece so it cannot be rebuilt as the rest crashes down at Ironside's feet, his helmet cracking and falling away as he mocks Percival, saying destroying the coffin changes nothing because they can just kill him and take the piece back, and even if this town failed, there are countless others to sacrifice. Just as he prepares to finish Percival, another holy knight, Melascula, steps in and stops him, warning that he has already found one of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse and cannot handle this alone, especially with the unknown force that wiped out all the monsters, guessing it could be a hero on the level of the 7 deadly sins, which shocks the group. Not wanting to risk staying, he urges a retreat, and Ironside locks eyes with Percival one last time with pure hatred before vanishing in smoke. With the enemies gone, the group finally returns to the ground. Anna collapses from exhaustion, only to be pulled back by her father, and the two share a quick, emotional reunion before she proudly rubs it in that she was right about Ironside all along. Then Sin returns, and everyone swarms him, asking who he called to deal with the monsters, and he casually lies about friends from the forest, which Donnie clearly does not believe, while Percival buys the story completely and keeps asking what kinds of animals they were. Sin cuts in and reminds them this is no time for mercy, since their enemies are actively trying to kill them, unlike allies who switched sides, and while Percival understands, he still refuses to kill anyone, pushing himself so hard that Nasians warns he will burn through all his magic. Thanks for hanging out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and catch the next recap.